Well, Bronwyn, thank you very much indeed, and good evening, everyone. I have a very pleasant task of presenting the award in a few moments, but just a second or two to say a few words of my own. Firstly, it's my privilege to welcome the Foreign Minister, Radak. It's very good to see you. And I will be inviting him to accept the Chatham House Prize on behalf of the Prime Minister. I've no doubt that the Prime Minister is a worthy recipient. He's a lifelong supporter of liberal democracy, was in his youth an opponent of the former communist regime in Poland, and also a very active member of Solidarity, for some of the time undercover because of the work he was doing. And of course, since then, amongst other eminent achievements in Europe, he has twice been Prime Minister of Poland and has been instrumental in building up a close and warm relationship between Poland and the United Kingdom. Now, that relationship is valuable and it's enduring. It comprises strong defence and security ties, as well as unwavering support for Ukraine in her present conflict against Russian invasion. So far, Poland has offered substantial humanitarian, financial and military aid, and we in the United Kingdom thank Poland for that. We regard it as extremely important. I digress, but only for a second, to say that it's important for this reason, because it's vital that Russia gains nothing from this conflict, or the rest of Europe and perhaps beyond will learn later that it is a mistake to have let them gain anything. Now, members voted for Donald Tusk to receive the Chatham House Prize, and I think they did so because of his commitment to restoring democracy to Poland, rebuilding her institutions, and upholding the rule of law. Now, I cannot stress how important this work has been, not only to Poland, but as an example to a much wider world. We may not often acknowledge it, but democracy is in trouble. It needs to be nurtured and reinforced. We are very unwise to take it for granted. We live in a world in which democracy has declined in each and every one of the last 18 years. In 1990, after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union, we were foolish enough to believe that democracy had won the battle of ideas. We were wrong in that. And as we look around the world today, we can see autocracy and populism growing at the same time as democracy retreats. Democracy doesn't die easily, but with each single retreat, it withers away just a little. Step by step, democracy's finest achievements, free societies, free markets, free choice and the rule of law, risk being eaten away by mistrust and malpractice, and we in this country should never overlook that. Every single time that autocrats curtail or deny either civil or human rights, democracy shrinks just a little bit more. And so we need men and women to fight against that, just as Donald Tusk has done for most of his life. Today, in over 70 countries, the news media is wholly or partially controlled by the state. That seems to me to be the very antithesis of democracy. Moreover, democracy faces countries, Russia, China, Iran, prominent among them, who do not only not themselves practice democracy, but are bitter opponents of it. They will destroy it if they can. It offends them, and the freedoms it offers scare them as they worry about what their own particular country may demand of them. And even in the most advanced democracies, we have seen populist action that undermines democratic norms, and I hope we will see no more of them. So it's against such a background that for many years Donald Tusk has fought. He's shone a light on anti-democratic practices and has been brave enough to reverse them in his own country against very hostile opposition indeed. We need his brand of leadership in many countries in and beyond Europe. And so for this and much else, in a life of fighting for what is demonstrably right and against what is demonstrably wrong, Donald Tusk is a worthy recipient of the Chatham House Prize, and it gives me very great personal pleasure to invite Radek Sikorski to receive it right now on his behalf. Radek. Well done. There we are. It's pretty heavy, be careful. I believe you need to hold it up.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. I shall convey your words exactly to Prime Minister Tusk. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry it's only me, but for me it's a great privilege and honor to be representing my Prime Minister here at Chatham House. Poland has a new government, Britain has a new government, but it's rare that we have such a smooth transition in terms of ideas and policies between governments. Britain and Poland had excellent relations under the previous Polish and British governments, and they will continue to have them under new governments in both countries. I was very pleased to welcome Minister Lamy in Poland on the third day of his holding office. He came to Germany, Poland, and Sweden. We already talked to Prime Minister Keir Starmer at the NATO summit in Washington, and the two prime ministers will be meeting tomorrow at Blenheim at the European political community. Please allow me first to read out Prime Minister Tusk's words, and then I'm at your disposal. So, Donald Tusk says this: "To receive this award from you is truly a great honor. The laudation makes me very proud. You recognize my contribution to our common efforts in the fight for the rule of law, democracy, and human rights. This is important to me personally because all my adult life I have been obsessed by the values which many consider anachronistic. The foundations of liberal democracy have recently been undermined by their external opponents and, increasingly often, also by their internal adversaries. The renaissance of authoritarian ideas, the cult of violence, disregard for rules, for the international order, for laws and the Constitution, contempt for the weaker, hatred towards others, have all materialized in many corners of the world, in both the East and the West, in America and Europe, not to mention the countries Anne Applebaum recently wrote about in her book under the telling title Autocracy, Inc. I stress these are the words of Donald Tusk, but the book is on pre-sale on Amazon. Today we can see with clarity that the words of warning that came from people like you, from institutions like Chatham House, that democracy is under threat, that history has returned with brutality, that we need to take up the fight in defense of our values and principles, and today also in defense of our borders and territory. I hope we now can see clearly that those warnings were not exaggerated, but they were often downplayed and even ridiculed. As I go through my notes and speeches from the years 2015, 2019, when I was President of the European Council, I find traces of my countless efforts to mobilize and alert other European leaders. Countless and ineffective efforts. Frankly speaking, I can even say that I earned a bit of a reputation, quite ambiguous for a politician, of an annoying and somewhat naive idealist, a maniac fixated on threats coming from Russia, a Don Quixote tilting at windmills. Fortunately, I was not entirely alone. and the next months and years only proved that it was those of us who made the warnings who were right. One of the greatest problems was the mood, which had long kept Liberal Democrats company, a combination of fear of confrontation with evil, of reluctance to call things by name, and of a false balance between truth and lies, and a fatalism with a lack of faith in one's own strength. I could see it virtually everywhere, during the migration crisis, in our trade talks with China, in election campaigns in the US, and in the efforts to accommodate Russia. I could go on. What prevailed was the doctrine, the mood of capitulation, that with no gas from Russia, the European economy will collapse. China is too big to introduce protective tariffs against. There are too many illegal migrants to stop them. It was the migration crisis in particular that showed the scale of weakness of the liberal democratic camp. People seek public authority that gives them a feeling of safety, a public authority that is able to protect the borders and the independence of the country, an authority that has the monopoly and is ready to resort to force in defense of its citizens and to enforce the rule of law. Politics without strength is a pathetic spectacle. And authority that is powerless or undecided in the face of evil, for ordinary people, is contemptible. There is no objective reason why the advocates of freedom, of rule of law, of individual rights should be weaker, less determined, or less decisive than corrupt autocrats or political magicians. When I returned, having fulfilled my European mission, to Polish politics, to stop the march of populists who had been in power for several years, I heard day in and day out those dreadful words: "You don't stand a chance. What is now happening in Poland and around Europe cannot be reversed." Luckily, I never forgot the words of Hannah Arendt, who said that things become irreversible only when people start to think so. And I didn't think so. I have always rebelled against the principle of submission and the view that good should not resort to force, that should turn the other cheek when you've already been slapped. Against nonviolence and moral victories, which are nothing else but a play on words and only help to swallow a bitter pill of failure. So many times in our history had moral centrist Democrats abdicated in the face of extremisms, which all too often led to catastrophes, misery, and mass atrocities. Freedom, the truth, and rule of law will not defend themselves, as the Prime Minister said. We must fight for them every single day. And we must know how to win, even if it costs us a lot of our time, a lot of our sweat, and sometimes our blood and tears. Today, it is the Ukrainians who are paying the highest price. It is no accident that two heroic presidents of Ukraine are the former laureates of your prestigious prize, Volodymyr Zelensky and Viktor Yushchenko. And this is also why I feel so proud to be among such remarkable people. Thank you for the honor. I accept your prize with gratitude. Donald Tusk, Prime Minister of Poland.